As we all know, it's 18th of July, and how can we forget that this is the foundation day of our university, that is Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vidyalaya Sagar in our university, which is very much recognized university and has a very good repo. It We can never forget the efforts of Dr. Sir Hari Singh Gaur for gifting us this university. Dr. Sir Hari Singh Gaur, a distinguished lawyer, jurist, educationist, social reformer, poet, novelist, and much more. Dr. Gaur, the founder of this university, was the first vice chancellor of the University of Delhi and the Nagpur University. Dr. Sir Hari Singh Gaur is the epitome of academics and excellence. On this very special day, we got a great opportunity to be a part of this national webinar on nanophotonic materials and devices organized by Department of Physics, School of Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. Without any delay, I humbly request to the convener of this webinar, Professor Ashish Verma sir, for the inaugural speech and welcome of our guests. Over to Professor Ashish Verma sir.
Thank you, Sharif. Good afternoon to all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor R.P. Tiwari, sir, Professor Shobha Shukla, Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science, IIT Mumbai, Professor Devakar Shukla, Dean, School of Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Professor Ranveer Kumar, Head of the Department Physics, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, Sagar, all the distinguished teacher participants from all over the country and abroad, teachers of the department, research scholars, and my dear students. It is with immense pleasure that I want to inform you that today is our university's foundation day. Dr. Sir Hari Singh Gaur, apart from being a lawyer, was a visionary and wanted to develop the level of education in the rural areas, and hence on this day in 1946 he established this university, which becomes the oldest affiliating and first central university of Madhya Pradesh. It is a coincidence that this day was given by Professor Shobha Shukla herself, and this couldn't have been a more better day to have this webinar. I am really very thankful to Professor Shobha Shukla. I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, because his supports and encouragement in all the time and encouragement to us for organizing this webinar. As we all know that this electronic and photonic materials have a tremendous impact on the modern world. They include a wide range of material classes and are developed through a deeply interdisciplinary combination of physics, chemistry, material science, and engineering. And today we all will be very benefited with the presentation of Professor Shobha Shukla. And lastly, I am very thankful to my Dean, Professor Devakar Shukla sir, and my Head of the Department, Professor Ranveer Kumar sir, because they constantly help me to organize me for all these webinars. And really today, for all this middle region of our country, they all will be get benefited with the lecture of Professor Shobha Shukla. Once again, thanks to all the participation of all the teachers, research scholars, and all the students. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's great to have one more eminent personality with us. He is Professor Devakar Shukla, sir, Dean, School of Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. And now, there is my humble request for his speech. Over to Professor Devakar Shukla, sir, Dean, School of Mathematical and Physical sciences.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Dr. Ashish Sharma, convener of this activity, Dr. Ranveer Kumar, head of the department, and all those who are present in the virtual dais, all those who are joined this activity from every corner of the country. It's a matter of occasion for all of us to have a webinar on the day of Foundation Day of the university and the day when we enjoy the pleasure of the 75th of the 75th anniversary of the university. The topic of this webinar is basically based on the nanophotonic material and devices, which is a burning area in the material sciences. The substances, if they developed in new form, they provide us a lot of benefits, creation of new technologies, then generation of the new substances provides the input for the development of the new devices. If you look at the journey of computers, in earlier days the computers were of very big sizes. A room was engaged in computers. They were called the mainframe computers. By virtue of the development of the devices, particularly the ICs, integrated circuits, then the size of the computer has been reduced. And with the emergence of the nanotechnology, and there are materials are coming up which are very useful for the development of the electronic devices, for the development of the computer system. No matter that how long will be the equipment, in a short duration, one can see the same device in a very small form. So with the emergence of the nanotechnology, the medical equipments are coming up, and medical equipments, they are becoming the user friendly. Say, for example, we are running in an era of COVID time. If we can have a kind of device which can immediately test whether the person is affected by the COVID or not at their home with the help of nanotechnology, it will be a very important part for all of us. It will be a very useful thought. It will be a very useful device for all of us. So nanotechnology is basically very much useful towards the medical sciences, where one can impute the injection, one can impute the material, one can impute the drug in the body in a place where actually the disease exists. So nanotechnology, it works at the at the order of 10 to the power 9, where the materials, where the ions, where the electrons, they can hit by the external devices, and it works at very small part. Suppose there is a cancer patient who is affected by the malicious cells. If a kind of radiation that has been imposed on the only infected cell of a cancer patient rather than affecting the whole body, then the cells will be killed by virtue of the laser beam, by virtue of the nanotechnology, by virtue of the nanomaterial, and the entire body will remain the same. Only the infected cell that will be treated by virtue of the nanotechnology. So nanomaterials are the future of the technology that we will see, and also it is the need of the hours to have the reduction of the dimension of the equipment in a smaller forms. From a bigger size, we move to the smaller size, and from a smaller size, we can move to the pocket size, and pocket size equipment, pocket size materials, they are the need of the hour. So I hope that Dr. Shobha Shukla from the IIT Bombay will certainly highlight the importance of the nanotechnology, the importance of the development of the nanomaterial, and by the development of the nanomaterial, definitely the devices can be developed for the human being, for the human mankind. So I'm sure on behalf of the faculty of the mathematical and physical sciences, it's our expectation that this lecture will be very useful, and all those who are involved in the development of the material, all those who are involved in researches in physics, they will be very much benefited by the lecture that is going to be held by virtue of the virtual platform. So, good wishes to organizers and good wishes to all those who are participants from different part of the country, and I'm sure that they will be benefited by the lecture of this eminence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Now, I would humbly request Professor Ranveer Kumar, sir, Head of the Department of Physics, for his words of wisdom. Over to Professor Ranveer Kumar, sir, Head of the Department of Physics. Maybe there is a network issue. He'll be back within a while. It's the time to listen from Professor Ranveer Kumar, sir. We'll be hearing from Professor Ranveer Kumar, sir, within a moment.
थोड़ा नेटवर्क इशू है, बस ज्वाइन कर ही रहे हैं.
कोई दिक्कत हो तो पहले सर का करवा लेते हैं. वीसी सर.
चलिए सर को इनवाइट कर लीजिए.
Yes. Sorry for the inconvenience. How much lucky we are. We have the excellent supervision of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor R.P. Tiwari, sir. Now, it is a proud privilege to listen from him. I humbly request Honorable VC, sir, to share his valuable words.
Guest speaker in today's webinar, Dr. Shukla, Dean School of Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Mr. Diwakar Shukla, Mr. Ashish Verma, Mr. Ranveer Kumar, Head Department of Physics, and remaining 84 participants assembled in this virtual platform for celebrating the Foundation Day of the University, and as well as for listening to Dr. Shukla on very important topic. My greetings to you all. Now, this topic per se is very important, but I'm not the one to speak on this. What I would like to highlight is that today in the Foundation Day lecture, we have listened to Professor R.A. Maselkar, where he talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas, Atmasamman, and Atmasayam. These 5 formats he gave today. And it is the most sincere wish of every citizen of any country for that matter to become self-reliant. Even every family cherishes the dream of becoming self-reliant in almost all the areas. And this, we can become Atmanirbhar through education only. because for becoming Atmanirbhar, the basic things that are needed is that we have to enhance, we have to improve our GDP, and that can happen only when we produce in India. It is not only production in India that matters, and it is not, we cannot become self-reliant if we import parts from different parts of the world and assemble here. Or if we set up, if we invite foreigners to set up their industries here and manufacture in India. Make in India will, only this paradigm will not make us self-reliant. For becoming self-reliant, we have to make in India by the Indians using Indian resources, natural resources, and also we have to create resources for manufacturing. That is very important. And that can happen when areas like this, the point of deliberation of today's lecture, and several other topics which can help us in producing in India by the Indians. And for that, the focus of education, Dr. Shukla will agree with us because she is from IIT Bombay, where the focus is on skill development of the youths. That is very important. And when we talk about skills, we have brought two categories. We have the hard skills that pertain to the knowledge of the core discipline, fundamentals of that, and
उसके बाद
how
रेस्टोरेंट को बुला देना 2
core
मिनट के लिए
discipline can be integrated,
राठी
can be
बोलते हैं
with other allied disciplines to form a sort of transdisciplinary group for evolution in science and technology, for finding solutions that the society is facing and for finding solutions to addressing those issues which nation requires for its progress and for becoming self-reliant. So, this plus the soft skills, and it is the it is the combination of hard skills and soft skills that will help us to produce in India by the Indians. Soft skills, there are several components, and picking the thread from today's foundation lecture, the youths, students that have joined this virtual platform for today's deliberation, listening to today's deliberation, as well as those who are in the colleges and the schools. They, particularly student group which are in schools, they would be required to perform those jobs which do not exist as yet. So how to train them to carry out, to perform those jobs which still do not exist? Because we do not know what are the skills needed to perform those jobs, because we do not know what are those jobs. So how to develop hard and soft skills in them? See, that is very important. We do not know what future they have in store for them, what are the areas where they would be required to work. So there's no question of developing skills, required skills. But still we need to develop the skills in them. So how that can be done? That can be done when actually we do not only teach them, the students, certain topics, certain concepts, but we develop capability in them to love. हिंदी में हम जिसको बोलते हैं, हमें उनको पढ़ाना नहीं है, सिखाना नहीं है, हमें उनको ये सिखाना है कि कैसे सीखा जाता है। यदि हम ये स्किल डेवलप कर लेंगे अपने विद्यार्थियों में, अपने युवाओं में, तो कोई भी विषय होगा वो पढ़ लेंगे। मैं अक्सर बोलता हूँ, फिजिक्स में यूजी पीजी कोर्स कंटेंट कंबाइनिंग टुगेदर would be hardly 30 to 40% of the domain knowledge available in this discipline. And if we teach only the course content, that means we are teaching them only 30 to 40% of physics. But if we teach them as to how to study physics, how to learn physics, they can learn any topic. The remaining 60 or 70%, whatever it is. So this, if we adopt this paradigm in teaching learning process, certainly we can inculcate the habit of learning in students, lifelong learning. Because if they will develop the taste for learning, how to learn, they can be self-reliant in learning. It is, when the question of self-reliance, of the issue of self-reliance, concept of self-reliance is there now, and it is almost a national aspiration. Everybody thinks about it. There's a lot of programs going on, writings going on. I'm also writing. My one paper has come today itself. So, the issue is, it is not only self-reliant in terms of money power or self-reliance in terms of defense, or, it is self-reliance in respect of everything, and particularly in respect of knowledge base. That is, you see, and if we are become self-reliant, if we, Dr. Shukla has gone several times abroad. She has done PhD, PDF, several other things abroad. Why did she go? Because she wanted to have quality education. If we can provide quality education in India, if we can become self-reliant in imparting quality education to our youth, that is also, a sort of self-reliance. And if we are lagging behind, then even if we are self-reliant in terms of economy, in terms of defense mechanism system, but we will be lacking here in this very aspect, crucial aspect, which is necessary for making us self-reliant. So, this can come, when we have invited speakers like Dr. Shukla. I'm really very happy, and I compliment Ashish Verma for roping in a person of her caliber to deliver lecture on this very important issue. It is not only, the students and research scholars and teachers who are attending this webinar, they will not be only benefited with the information or the content of the lecture, but also as to how to deliver lecture, number one. And number two, what are the other important ingredients that are necessary to become a good orator. So in addition to the content that you would be delivering on this very important topic, even the way of presentation and how to articulate, how to express views in the most forthcoming manner and connect with the audience, that also would be a sort of learning for all of us. So I'd like to compliment Dean, head of the department, Mr. Verma, and of course Seri, all the time she is doing very good anchoring, and Sanjay Pathakji and all others who have joined this and who sort of help us to make this seminar successful. And I hope that you will have very good interaction with Dr. Shukla. I thank her again. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words. And now, if Professor Ranveer Kumar can listen to me, I would humbly request him for his best wishes and blessings before we start the technical session of the day. Professor Ranveer Kumar, sir, Head of the Department of Physics. If Professor Ranveer Kumar can listen to me, I humbly request him for his words of blessings. I think there is some technical issue. We'll just rectify it. We are very sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry for the delay. And now everybody is eager to be a part of the presentation given by our eminent speaker, Professor Shobha Shukla ma'am. And for her introduction, I would request Mr. Sanjay Pathak sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sari. Very good morning to all fellow scientists connected to the virtual world to listen to an academician of international repute. I am extremely thankful to my mentor, Professor Ashish Verma, for providing me an opportunity to introduce our main speaker of today's webinar, who happens to be an eminent scientist and academician of international acclaim. Dr. Shobha Shukla is currently working as Associate Professor in the Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Sciences, IIT Mumbai. She obtained her PhD degree in Electrical Engineering 2010 from Department of Electrical Engineering, University at Buffalo, New York, USA, and MS in Electrical Engineering in 2008 from Department of Electrical Engineering, University at Buffalo, New York, USA. Prior to that, she was a postdoctoral fellow in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, Howard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA, and also she had been a research scientist at Nano Access LLC, Buffalo, New York. She has over 50 research papers published in the international journals of high impact factors and a similar number in the conference proceedings. She is a fellow of the University of Birmingham, India Institute, and recipient of the Young Faculty Award at IIT Mumbai. Her biography is published in Cambridge, Who is Who, in January 2011 issue. She has delivered several invited talks in reputed institutions. She has several international patents to her credit. Dr. Shukla is a reviewer of many international journals and serves on the editorial board of scientific reports by Nature Publishing Group from 2017 onwards, and a guest editor of Journal of Physics Photonics. She has successfully supervised 16 doctoral theses. She has successfully raised the funds of $3.8 million from various funding agencies. We feel fortunate enough to have them with us in this virtual webinar to benefit it and by a plethora of knowledge. I welcome you on my personal behalf and also on behalf of the Department of Physics of Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, India. It is pleasant coincidence that today happens Thank you. Over to respected ma'am, Professor Shobha Shukla.
Thank you, Professor Pathak. Sherry, can I start or should I wait for the formal approval from somebody?
No, ma'am, please, it's your turn, please.
Okay, sure, great, thank you. So thank you, Professor Verma, Professor Shukla, Professor Tiwari, and I would like to also thank Professor Ranveer Kumar, who for some technical issues could not join this meeting. It's like Professor Verma had suggested that it's just a coincidence that I chose this day. And because I was pretty busy with the PhD admission throughout the week, so 18th was the best time because no admissions are going on, and then we can relax while presenting. But I did not realize, so it's an auspicious occasion of Foundation Day, so that way it was good. But I see that I am standing between you and your lunch, so I'll try to make it short so that it's not very much delayed. Okay, I had made slightly long presentation, but I'll skip some parts. And if you see that like some part is not relevant and you want me to elaborate on something, please do use chat box. I'll keep on reading that part also. So before I start, I would also like to thank Professor Tiwari for his wise words. It's really nice to hear from him about the soft skills, hard skills, and learn to learn. So that is really something which like we do it without even thinking about it. But उसको शब्दों में बोलना इट्स बहुत ही जरूरी होता है और उसको अगर हम उन शब्दों में नहीं कहते हैं तो कई बार होता है जो लोग अननोइंगली उसको कर लेते हैं उनके लिए तो इट इज फाइन बट बच्चों में स्पेशली टू इनकलकेट दिस हैबिट बहुत जरूरी है कि हम उसको कॉन्शियसली उस डायरेक्शन में काम करें और कॉन्शियसली उसको इम्पार्ट करें उनके नॉलेज बेस में उनके कॉन्शियसनेस में उनके अनकॉन्शियसनेस में ऑल्सो so that way, I was pretty happy to hear his talk, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to present some of the research work that we are doing at IIT Bombay. And with this brief words, I'll start my presentation. So give me a few minutes before I could share my presentation. Okay. Okay. So, are you able to see this presentation? Can someone please confirm whether it is visible or not?
No, madam, it is not.
No,
visible.
no.
Okay. Let me see. Is it now or not yet?
Not yet, ma'am.
Okay, let me try it in some other ways.
You have to share your screen actually.
Yeah, I tried. I shared entire screen. So here it is showing, but maybe it's issue with the technique, with the connection. Okay. For some reason, it is not allowing me to share. Is there anything that needs to be done from your end?
I think it will ask for a dialog box. It'll
aspects of research that I was interested in. So I was involved in the two-photon lithography system, which I had learned during my PhD, and the spectroscopy aspect, laser ablation aspect, which I had learned even before that. Then, so this facility setup took quite some time because it's a state-of-the-art facility and it needed lots of systems to be ordered and then assembled. So it's an in-house facility that we have developed. So I had plenty of time at my hand, and then we had to do something before the system starts to run, and it took us 3 years to develop this facility. So in that time, I started dabbling with this water purification, desalination, and a little bit of energy harvesting, because you can use chemical route to synthesize these nanomaterials, and lots of central facilities were there. So with that, this water research started, which was not I was trained on. I'm a trained nanophotonics person, or like you can say optics was my strength, but then I started working on this, and it was more of a frugal engineering. So frugal engineering is nothing to be ashamed of, I would say. It is something which we should work on, because by doing fundamental sciences, by doing high-end research, we indirectly benefit to the society. Whereas by frugal engineering, or by doing something which directly benefits society. So when I say frugal, because society is pretty much cost sensitive, technologies have to be given to the society. So for that, you have to look for really the low cost solutions, and that is where this research start. And this research is started, and I'm pretty happy that we have gone very far in this field. Also, it's now almost like half and half. My half of the energy goes into photonic research, and half goes into the water research. So that I'll discuss, and then I'm involved in various administrative activities and all. So these are the few activities that that we are involved in as a nanostructure engineering and modeling laboratory. This is something which we have made very recently. I will not show the details because I was told that this talk will be recorded, so I'll not be showing any unpublished results. But this one I am showing, and this is what it's a 3D pyramid. As you can see, it's made within 50 micron by 50 micron. So even like 1/4 of what your hair thickness is. And so this is a 3D pyramid that we have made, and this is what we are. We are trying to reach to the apex and see where we can go and take IITB also along with that. So, and having said that, this is what we strive for. We are involved in quite a few fundamental research, especially when it comes to two-photon lithography and semiconductor material synthesis. But then we are involved in lots of applications like solar cells, water research, supercapacitor-based research, and metamaterials. So I'll be discussing a few things like lithography, metamaterials, and solar part, and the rest of the part maybe next year when I'll visit you in person. And if COVID situation will allow, I'll discuss that. So this will be the outline of my talk, and so basic introduction, then I'll quickly go through the fabrication issues, and mostly I'll spend time on the solution or the things that we are working on, and finally technology. So motivation comes from this growth of operating speed. We are like I think Professor Tiwari had mentioned that. Professor Shukla, I think, had mentioned that operating speed is getting higher because the number of transistor per unit area has been increasing. Earlier computers were fairly big, and they were operating at very like low speed. So somewhere around this time, they were operating at like megahertz speed. Now we are in a regime where we are working at the terahertz regime. So now this, some of you who are aware with the CMOS electronics, we know that we are already 45 nanometer. We are using 45 nanometer technology, 32 nanometer technology. Even Intel has made sure that we go for 22 nanometer technology, which is people have been predicting that it will break the Moore's law and all those things. But Intel has been making sure, mostly because of the advent of nanotechnology. Otherwise, it is not possible to just simply scale down the material and go ahead with the standard CMOS way. So things have changed dramatically, especially because of the advent of now nanotechnology, and now its confluence of plasmonics, photonics, and maybe, who knows, something new that will come up to make sure that we keep on reducing the size and keep on reducing the pixels, and thereby we can get bigger and bigger screen. So it is only possible when we go really tiny in terms of transistor sizes, and that is where this confluence will come. So not photonics will not win, plasmonics will not win. It's the combination of all the technologies that I think would win, and that is, as I mentioned, it's the nanotechnology that will make it possible. So that's a very famous phrase. Plenty of room at the bottom. Is there anybody who would like to say who has said it? It's a physics department, so I'm sure quite a few people would be knowing the person who said this wisdom of words of wisdom. Anyone? Maybe there is a connection issue, or I don't know. So Richard Feynman is, it's a very famous 1970s lecture where he discussed these aspects. And so just imagine the kind of visionary he was. So in those times, he even constituted $1,000 prize if somebody can write on this tip of a needle, this something that he had thought he'll give award to, and it was made possible in late 80s. But the kind of vision he had, that we can exploit nanotechnology for making impossible possible. So that is where, which has made also possible that we can go on with the current new technologies that can allow us to have better and faster devices. So nanotechnology is the next big thing, definitely, which is going to be very, very, very small. And so it deals with manipulating and rearranging atoms and molecules, and in a way to create novel devices, novel materials, novel systems. And the bottom picture, actually, it shows this density of states, that when you go from bulk to quantum well, which is kind of 2D, then quantum wire, you can play with a lot of features that are there. So your density of states are varied. So you have quantization effect in the case of quantum dots. In the case of metals, you can still introduce the conductivity, you can tailor it, you can tailor its optical properties. So many physical, chemical, and biological properties of the material that are very different in the bulk, and now you can tailor it, you can modify it, you can even change it as per your wish if you have control over the material. So that is what has made possible with the advent of nanoscale technology. And it is directed towards understanding, creating improved materials, devices, and systems. So it is not only devices aspect, it is more. It is also from the fundamental aspect that we should explore from the nanotechnology perspective. So there are certain obstacles and hurdles in the nanotechnology, especially mass production and throughput with the cost constraint. So funding definitely requires a long-term investment, and intellectual property issues are there. So having said that, this mass production and throughput is a problem. I'll just give you example. So people have been using this, expecting it that carbon nanotube with the Nobel Prize also went to, and it will change the world entirely. But if you look deeply into the cost aspect, it is still much more expensive to create that 1 gram of carbon nanotube, the kind of quality that we would like to use, than a gold, the same mass of the gold. So it's not really something which goes like nanotechnology is good, but is it viable technology? So are the kind of throughput that it is giving, is it enough? So that kind of constraints will come into the picture, and that will be overcome only if you have a long-term funding. Something one cannot change in one go. So it has to be done in a way that okay, today the cost is say 1 crore, but tomorrow it will come down, and then day after that it will keep on coming down, and now you can see people are selling these carbon nanotubes like few thousand rupees, you can get 1 milligram or something. So that has been made possible only with the sustainable funding that has been roped in. Then intellectual properties issue, that is a huge problem for all over the world, because patent office does not know anything about this nanotechnology, the importance of it. They are mostly lawyers, and then they do not understand the issues that are there and the nuances that are there in terms of the like advancement of the science. So for them, it's like apple fell on the Newton's head and Newton discovered gravity. Science doesn't move like that. It's not the Newton who has first coined the word gravity. Science progresses in the very small steps. So, like the concept was there. The only thing is to put it in a nice word. Same thing, photoelectricity concept. It was not there that Einstein was the only one who talked about it. So science progresses in a very small steps, and that is how things move. So one has to appreciate even the small incremental work that has been done in the science, and that is how science progresses. So with that, I'll move to the photonics part. So it's a marriage of nanotechnology with the photonics, and photonics is something related with the light. So nanophotonics is light matter interaction at nanoscale. So like material science is a confluence of physics, chemistry, and some engineering branches. Similarly, the nanophotonics is a confluence of optical engineering, electrical engineering, physics, chemistry, nanotechnology, and sometimes even the biotechnology, if you are looking at that aspect also. So the kind of devices that we make using nanophotonics, I have put some devices here, like quantum dot solar cells, dye-sensitized solar cells, lasing at nanoscale, single photon emitter, super resolution imaging, highly efficient photo detection, so kind of a sensor, spectroscopy, can be used for biosensing as well as like chemical sensing, water quality sensing. That is what we are using it for. Optical filtering, and then last is metamaterials. I'll very briefly discuss solar cell and photonic crystal part, because most of us are aware of it. Solar cell has been there from last 50 years. The silicon technology is already pretty mature and fairly inexpensive. The quantum dot and dye sensitized has also been there from last 10, 15 years, and people have been using it. So I'll not spend much time on these aspects, whereas I'll discuss a little bit in detail about the metamaterials aspect, because that is where I am also pretty interested in, and that is something new that people are expecting will change the way we are looking at nanophotonics. So this right-hand side picture, if you can see, can anyone like write it on the chat box, like what it is? I wanted to make this presentation a bit interactive, but unfortunately, for some reason, I think I'm the only one doing monologue. So this is an example of metamaterial. What you're seeing is the white light that is falling onto it, and with some modification and all by patterning the material, you are able to filter it. You are able to do kind of a multiplexing, and that is how the metamaterial that is coming into the picture. Before I go into this, I'll just quickly explain like the kind of photo devices that we are dealing with. So photoconductive device is a pretty simple device. Light falls onto it, you generate the electron will pair, it generates electricity, and that is how you measure it. Photovoltaic device, it's a bit of a little bit complex device in terms of there is an intrinsic layer and PMN type is so intrinsic layer is sandwiched between P and N type, and so intrinsic layer is responsible for electron hole generation when light falls onto it. And because of this depletion region, there is a built-in potential, and electron and hole travel to the different parts of this electrode, and finally it helps in generating the voltage. And that is a very basic principle of all the solar cells that we use. Irrespective whether it's a silicon solar cell, you will have a hard PN junction. In case of quantum dots, you have another polymer or some other material which work like a P, and quantum dot will work like a N, or it can be vice versa. All polymer devices, you will have P3H3 PCDM kind of combination. Again, you have P-type material and N-type material, something like that we have shown here also. So you have a polymer and then quantum dot. Quantum dot can be, so we have used this PDSE, lead selenide based quantum dot, lead sulfide based quantum dot, indium phosphide cadmium sulfide based quantum dot, cadmium selenide based quantum. So we have synthesized lots of quantum dots. So these are like inorganic material we have made with a core shell structure, type 1 structure, type 2 structure, and embedded it. It's a very simple solution processable device that you make it. So it's very simple. You have ITO coated glass, you put P dot as a whole transport layer, and then mix it, and then finally you put a separate electrode. It could be aluminum, silver, gold, whatever is available, and that goes with the energy band diagram, and you put it, and finally you get your solar cells. So this is how most of the solar cell devices work on. So in dye sensitized, dye becomes the active material. So dye absorbs the light and generates electron hole pair. Finally, it is transported through these uh, uh, the solution that is in there, electrolyte. In this case, the polymer is going to be there. In the case of polymer solar cell, then the second type is this photonic crystal. We have been looking at it. Nature is abundant with this photonic crystal. I'll discuss it in a couple of slides later also. So what these materials again use, it's very much, you can think like an analog of standard material that is there. So there is a band gap that arises due to the standard atomic arrangement of the material. And we see those band gap at the X-ray because the spacing between the two atoms are pretty tiny. It's in angstrom level. And that is why X-ray, which has the wavelength of the similar order, we see band gap originating around that time. Now think of a material where we can have of the range of visible light, which is like 500 nanometers. So visible light is 400 to 700 nanometer. If you make a material system or atomic unit or a unit of a material of that order, and if you arrange it in a one-dimensional, two-dimensional, or the three-dimensional, you can generate an artificial band gap like here. And this artificial band gap can be used for frequency filtering, for the lasing, for wave guiding, enormous number of applications that are there for these photonic crystals. So photonic crystal came somewhere around 1990, presented by Ablunovich, and after that it was developed extensively, but mostly it was for the longer wavelength. But with this advent of nanotechnology in the late 90s, it was possible to make very precise nanoparticles, and that is what made possible that 3D photonic crystal could be made, and then people use it extensively for wave guiding, and now photonic crystal fibers are there for lasing application. Even for delivering the laser, very high power laser, one can have a photonic crystal fiber. So we have been making this. I'll show you that also pretty much later. So the third part is this metamaterial aspect. So I'm not sure whether because the audience is pretty much mixed. So I'll just explain a little bit in detail. So metamaterials is simply patterning of material. Okay, so it's one of the very famous example is this cloaking, which is shown here. So if you have an apple, if you coat it with a metal material, you will not be able to see it, even if it is kept in front of your eyes. So it's kind of a Harry Potter cloak. So bending light to our will, that is what the metamaterials allows us to do. So strategic patterning of material, and it will allow me to clean, prevent, and obscure a signature, which can come from a device, and it can be in the thermal range, optical range. So thermal is somewhere like 1 micron to 10 micron range. And so most of these sensors, even this airport scanning, etc., terahertz scanning, etc., is also done around that region. Then optical sensors, which is a visible typically, that is what we talk about, visible and NIR. Acoustic sensors, so soundproofing. Then it's not soundproofing actually, it's more of a material that can be detected with the sonar cannot be detected. So developing a material for that aspect. And so the effect is going to be like water flowing around the rock and resuming its course. But initially, metamaterial was invented, was coined as a material which can allow the flow, but over the year, the definition has broadened. And now, any material system which is strategically patterned has lambda by 10 kind of sizes, or the unit cell size has to be in that lambda by 8, lambda by 10, something along that line. And you can manipulate the light, like in the case here, it is allowing only the red light and the rest of the lights are diverted. Or this is a fishnet kind of structure where you can manipulate the light, you can change the polarization, you can anyway change the light that material is interacting with, and dimensions are much smaller than that. So that is how it is different from the photonic crystal. So when I'm talking about the photonic crystal, it's a cousin of a photonic crystal, but you can say a 10 years younger cousin of a photonic crystal. So photonic crystal wavelength is the light it is interacting with, the order has to be similar, like in the case of atomic crystals. So X-ray and atoms have, the spacing is similar. Similarly, in the photonic crystal, the spacing is similar. Whereas in the materials, the dimensions are almost like lambda by 8, lambda by 10, which allows light or the electromagnetic wave that it is interacting with to not to see individual unit, but see it like a unified material. And that is how it would not distinguish individual units. It will see it like a material, a generic material that is there. So that is what the beauty of these metamaterials. So there are many applications of metamaterials. So bioapplication is one I'm showing here. I'll just quickly tell you. So these are like silver dots that were made. So this is the SEM of that. And when silver nanowire comes, otherwise it was not visible. But when you put these in close contact to each other, and you are able to see the fluorescence enhancement. And this is a chirality enhancement. Circular dichroism was typically it's of 10 or 20, but with this gold nanoparticle in the vicinity of gold nanoparticle, and they are tethered very close to each other in a very strategic way, then you can enhance it to close to 10 to 100 folds. These are the two applications that which I was pretty interested in, so I'll describe this also. So this is a fishnet kind of a structure. So simple net, and there are some modifications that were also proposed. So this is a simple line that is pretty easy to make. You might have seen in a grating kind of structure also, and these are like little bit modified design that are there. And what is shown that it will work like a super absorber. So you see its entire visible range, 400 to 700 nanometer, and it is absorbing always more than 50% and in the entire range. So that makes it very unique. And other important point is whatever the angle of incidence was there, it was not changing much. So it's a polarization independent as well as angle of incidence independent super absorber kind of material can be made, and it's very thin, 100 nanometer or so kind of thickness are there, which makes it very good for putting it on top of a solar cell, and you may be able to beat the diffraction limit with that. Not diffraction limit, the limit for the solar cell absorption that are there. And the another thing is this super resolution imaging that is also possible by this concentrated kind of a design. I'll discuss this in my presentation a little bit later also. There are a few other applications of metamaterials which are upcoming and which we are exploring in detail. I'll discuss a little bit here on that. So this is copper-based metamaterial. So it's an entire the internal heat management of utilizing the copper. So you know that copper has a solenoidal kind of effect, and copper is pretty good of thermal conductive material. So what happens if you coat it with a material and you have a copper pattern, there are discontinuities, it will absorb heat and it propagates. But then you put some material in between, some inert material, say polymer or something, in between, so it will not allow the heat to pass between the layers, and that is how you can cloak it, the heat. So the person who typically that is how the things are detected in the field, or anyone sees the thermal signature by looking at the heat signal or the IR light that is emitting. So if you can internally manage this IR, the heat that is generated by absorbing the copper and then transport it from here to there, and using these kind of concentric ring, and then you have kind of inert material in between. With the graphene, actually, it changed the entire dynamics of all the things. So earlier, if you remember, I said about this cost of carbon nanotube, and it's as expensive as gold or even more expensive. But graphene has changed everything because it's extremely inexpensive to produce, and and it has a property which are like much better than any of the material that we typically use for making these devices. So that is how I think it will overcome all the other issues that are there with the nanotechnology. So here, what was proposed was graphene. Again, there was a dielectric layer put between the graphene layer, and that was shown that it can work like a super absorber. So it will absorb everything. So whatever the heat or the signal that you want to obscure, or you do not want others to see from the device, and you coat it with this material, and it's pretty thin material that we are talking about, and that is how you can feel the signal. So, and then this is for the sound wave acoustic metamaterial kind of structure, where this is a polymer, so it works slightly different. It's like bulk modulus and elasticity. That is what they play for making these signals. So as I mentioned, the choice of material for most of the nanotechnology-based things are semiconductor materials, nanoparticles, nanodots, and so on. But we are mostly interested in graphene-based materials and gold and composite materials that I'll discuss. So why graphene? Because it's abundant. It has excellent thermal conductivity. If you look at here, I'll just discuss here. So copper has conductivity somewhere around 386 watt per millikelvin, which will be somewhere down here. This is conductivity, in-plane conductivity of graphene that is shown with the yellow thing. This is a 2-layer and then 3-layer, and then bulk graphite also comes here. So the kind of in-plane conductivity the graphene provides, it surpasses any of the material, any of the metal that are available. So that, and this is out of plane conductivity, it's very, very poor. And you can see like 15, 16 in the case of single layer, it's almost like 0. For graphite, you can still see a little bit of conductivity because the distance is fairly small, almost like 3.3. So it has very good conductivity in terms of Young's modulus. It's much more than any of this ceramic or wood, etc. is somewhere here. Your polymer is somewhere here. Then silicone, then granite, and all those are here. And graphene is somewhere here. So all these things have somewhere around 100 gigapascal and so on. Whereas graphene, if you have like very nice single without defect in graphene, that will be around 1000 megapascal. The optical properties wise, it offers another very great advantage. So this property, the thermal conductivity, is used specifically for cloaking, super absorption and all. This is mostly used in mechanical as well as some of the membranes that we are making. This property we use for any of the optical signatures. So if you see the range that we typically work on, this visible light to NIR and IR, and finally reaches up to this terahertz. So this entire range, it is almost transparent. So in our visible range, then you start to go towards like UV side. Then only it is something that it starts to absorb somewhere around 230 to 40. Nothing below 300. It's sorry, above 300. It's fairly flat, which makes it very interesting material for all the optical properties. Only thing remains is like how would you pattern it? How would you change its ways for your kind of application? Now, having said that, graphene has extraordinary properties, but for quite a few different applications, like making electrodes for metamaterials specifically, because you need. I'll just actually little bit explain here. So refractive index is root mu epsilon, and it's equal to root mu n epsilon. So your magnetic properties, permeability, basically mu here. Magnetic materials are active in the very large frequencies, tens of micron or something. Whereas optical materials have negative epsilon specifically here. They work, metals work somewhere in this visible region. That is where we see shiny materials. So most of the natural occurring materials are here. It's positive epsilon, positive mu. Metals have negative epsilon, but positive mu. Magnetic materials have positive epsilon, negative mu, but frequencies are very far off. So this is a quadrant which is of interest for the metamaterial, because then only this light will behave differently and it will not pass through the material, whereas it will. So there are other things that are involved, like pointing vector, and that is how you explain this negative loop velocity and all. So you get these kind of metamaterial cloaking kind of properties. For that, you need negative epsilon, negative mu. So no naturally occurring material has, but we know metals have this negative epsilon. So what was proposed by Pendry back in 2000, that if you make a solenoid of metal, so we know solenoid in the middle, if you pass the current in the middle, you can have magnetism basically. So this mu can be generated in the metals. So that was the proposition, and then he had shown with lots of mathematics that you make a thin wire, then plasma can be generated, and thinning the plasma, and then aspect ratio starts to play a role. And finally, with the kind of split ring resonator was the one that was shown after this thinning of the plasma. that one can have a kind of a cloaking effect. So that is what makes these noble materials pretty relevant for the new kind of nanophotonic devices that are coming up. So, like this metal, and so gold, silver, copper, etc., have reinvented themselves in terms of new photonic kind of character that can they attribute to the nanotechnology or nanoscale dimensions. So at nanoscale, they change the color from gold. Gold color spatial gold changes from yellow to green or red, depending on how you are making or how small it is. So it has at small scale, people have been using gold from ages. If you remember that Holy Grail kind of thing where they were using gold for uh, nanoparticles, even in our script, Veda and Bhasma, etc., they are using pretty precise size of the nanoparticles, gold nanoparticles for um, intake, because at certain size it helps body to rejuvenate. But if you are beyond that, so there has been research done at IIT Bombay itself, where they have shown that if you follow the protocol that are told in the Ayurveda, it works beautifully for the rejuvenation. But otherwise, the way we make it in the chemical synthesis process, we do not get a monotonic material, we get a polydispersed material. And due to polydispersity, it will be harmful because it can work like a toxic material. So it's very important and to know what we are dealing with. So do not blindly follow anything and just see yourself. We are scientists, so we have ability to work on all these factors also. So it supports many optical properties when you bring it down to the nanoscale. Some of them I have shown here, like if you just coat gold, it's a specular reflection that you will be getting. But if you pattern it, kind of gold rod, you can have extended spectral response because of this plasmonic coupling. Then if you further pattern it kind of a chiral structure, then you can have polarization rotation, which is a kind of metamaterial again. Then if you have like a straight ring kind of a structure, which is most famous kind of metamaterial structure, you can get retro reflection and the kind of exotic properties that one can think of. So having explained like lots of monophotonic devices, metamaterials, and all those things, it's not that easy to make all these things, especially from the perspective of sizes and the kind of requirement that it has. So most of the approaches that I have discussed are solution process or plasmonic space. Molecular printed electronics is also something which people have been exploring. But due to the size issues and they are pretty slow. You add atom by atom. They are not very popular yet. Metamaterials-based approaches are there. Metaphotonics-based approaches are there. But I feel the future technologies are going to be combinatorial. It's not going to be simple approaches that we have been using. So I wanted to ask this also at this point so that I could also take a break and you could also take a break from listening to me. So maybe you can take a break in terms of thinking here. So whatever the things that I'm showing here are colorful that we can see here. But can you explain like from where these colors are originating? So none of these colors are actually from the pigment or dye or anything which is inherently has any kind of a coloring to it. So all these are photonic materials. So they are patterned materials, and that is where the color comes. Our famous this peacock feather or the butterfly. All these things they are used for various purposes. Sometimes to reflect light, sometimes for cooling purposes, sometimes for attracting the mate, and for feeding any prey and so on. So how do we do it? This part I'll very quickly discuss. Top-down methods are there, like photolithography, E-beam lithography, X-ray lithography, interference lithography, scanning probe. And then there are bottom-up methods like self-assembly, nanotemplating, laser writing, imprinting. And so the basic difference is top-down, you take the bulk, you break it down, hathoda mar mar ke, kind of make it smaller, 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 and reach to the certain size. In the bottom-up, you take atom, add, and finally you reach to a certain size, and that is where you are happy. You can call nanomaterial, and you work around this for making various devices. So these are the two different ways of making it. Each has its own issues. For lithography, which is the most common way of making material, even the transistor that we are using or the devices that we are using are mostly made by lithography, including solar cells so far. So what we do is use electromagnetic wave and charged particle depending on where you are working with. So optical beam, electron beam, X-ray beam, ion beam. In the imprint lithography, it's mostly the soft lithography, a kind of stamping, that is embossing. Then the scanning probe lithography, it is mostly in this fundamental regime. People are, because these are very slow technology, STM, AFM, and dip pen lithography. So it's literally like you have a pen, dip pen lithography specifically, and you are putting one atom by atom, and so it's pretty slow for making large area devices. Electromagnetic waves are extensively used for making nanophotonic devices or even electronic devices. All the electronic devices that you use in your day-to-day life, whether it's a phone, whether it's a like laptop, and so on, it's your electromagnetic wave, and that is your visible light, small portion of it. Mostly, the thing that you are using is in the ultraviolet region. So we are in this range. That is where this most is about to be broken. And then non-ionizing wave, pretty much we are making like large structures and so on. So where we are coming into the picture is somewhere we deal with this intensity dependent phenomena also. So this intensity is not very easy to get in continuous light. So what we do is we make our pulse to be very, very short. So intensity, which was distributed in say seconds. So same 1 watt was in second. Now that 1 watt, I have compressed it in the femtosecond. So just think of the intensity boost that it will get in that femtosecond, and that is where allows me to have a very strong field interaction, multi-photon excitation, non-resonant multi-photon excitation, and so on. So that is where it is called this multi-photon processes that we exploit for making these structures. Before I start with this multi-photon, this is the example of the photolithography, because the talk was more generic on this nanophotonics. So I'll just very quickly explain how this standard photolithography works. So you have a silicon, you have put grow SiO2 on top of it. You put the photoresist, which is photoresponsive, can be photocleaving or photo polymerization kind of a material. So you have a mask, you like shine the light, wherever the light is shining, that part gets since it's a photocleaving kind of a material, the polymer will be broken, and unexposed part will not go through this kind of phenomena, and that is how you can make this kind of a channel into it. And then that channel you can use it for etching, and then finally doping with a suitable ion, and then finally you put your metal on top of it, and done. Your transistor is ready. So that is a simplistic picture, but more or less it works from understanding point. Um, so what we use currently, you're using i5 processor or i7 processor. So basically you are using 32 nanometer technology, but the laser that you are using is 193 nanometer. So now you must be thinking like, it's not diffraction limited. Right? How will you go to from 193 to 32 nanometer? So basically it's not a very simple step that I had shown, not a single pass. So you will not only shine laser from that mask one time. So you have multiple exposure, you will use phase shift mask. It's an entirely like different field altogether, and it's not typically called a science, it's called the art of making it. So you use complex optics, and then finally with the high refractive index liquid, you just focus it down to it, and then finally you are able to make this 32 nanometer technology. But it's almost going to break because it's not sustainable. We are almost like 3 atom thick away from these like gate, and the channel distance is pretty small. So that is where the industry is pretty much looking into high K material and the low K material for both the kind of things. So heat dissipation is a problem, physical limit is a problem, and then cost. So now the next generation electronics is so Intel is heavily investing in carbon nanotube and graphene. So next gen electronics is not going to be simply scaling up of these things that we have been using. So bottom up processes will be the future, but it will be differently done. So it allows us smaller geometries than standard photolithography. carbon nanotube, silicon nanowire have been explored, are being explored actually from Intel extensively. Then organic and hybrid devices will change the solar cell regime. Because silicon solar cell is not going to be the future. It's not transparent. You cannot use it. So it looks pretty okay that in the desert you have put it, but the kind of heat it is increasing, further increasing the heat of the atmosphere. So that is where these organic electronics or hybrid semiconductor-based material, which can be coated onto window glass and so on, that will be the future. And then it's much more economic as compared to any other. So as I explained, it's atom by atom. You just keep on adding your building block one after the other, and you make whatever the structure that you want to make. So idea is borrowed from the nature. Nature is typically use all the bottom-up processes. It slowly uses these small building blocks and then arranges into various kind of architecture that it wants it to be. So we cannot move completely to bottom up, and it's slow and it's a long time, very complex procedure, and we don't really understand much of like dynamics that it plays role to. So it's still like works like I mentioned the plasmas. So we know gold nanoparticle 2 nanometer is catalyst. We know 3 or 4 nanometer even are going to be toxic for us. 5 nanometer beyond, it becomes pretty good for us. Then 10 nanometer beyond, no, it's not good for us. Why it is behaving like this, we don't still understand. So that is where like we don't have control. We don't have any technology yet to have a very precise control over all the nanomaterials. So we have to come up with the kind of approach where the trade-off occurs, the top-down and bottom-up, and that is where this micro and nano fabrication will come into the picture. Another problem is this metallic patterning. There are no standard lithography tools where the metals can be patterned. So all the transistors that we make, finally it is the film is coated on for the metallization. So and the other problem with the metals are the transistor can. So we have already exploited these lateral area. So now the next gen transistors are in the third dimension. So stacking of the transistors are happening. Since the stacking is happening, your electrodes should also go into the third dimension. So that is not possible because, as I mentioned, it's simply sputtering or the PVD. That is what people are using for these kind of metallization. So with that, we come into the picture that bottom-up methods that are there. So photon-induced chemical reaction results in metallic nanostructure. We make subwavelength structure 2D as well as 3D. You may recall the pyramid that we have made. It's just one of the examples. We can write on any substrate, on its flexible substrate, large area, low cost, one step, size, green, and so on. With that, the kind of things that we make, this research is funded by DSTCD, very generously funded by them, Ministry of Defense, as well ISCC at IIT Bombay. So these are like narrow walls that we have made. So the distance between the two walls are 1 micrometer. These are the grating structure, which is essential component of all the spectroscopy. Actually, it is the most important component of all the spectroscope that we have, and then this is the fishnet structure that we use for metamaterials. So these are the 3 applications that we explore for metamaterial. So this is a simple principle. I'm not going to the details. So you absorb, instead of absorbing one single photon, you absorb 2 simultaneous photons. Because of that, intensity phenomenon that I explained earlier, that you have compressed the beam into such a small intensity and such a small time that the atom is not able to respond in a simpler manner. So non-linear things comes into the picture, and it absorbs 2 photons to fill the gap. And just because of that, we can go inside the material and make changes into the material. So in a regular light or a visible laser, you go inside the material. So wherever the material is there, it will start absorbing, and the focal point it is absorbed. So you will always make a kind of a dumbbell shape. It's called the point split function in the technical sense. Whereas in the 2 photon, you shine the light, and you will have this kind of like you can go into the bulk, and wherever only the focus point, because the intensity will be just enough over there, and you can make inside the same, and rest will be unaffected. So that is the beauty of this material, and that is how we can make this 3-dimensional structure. So it's very similar to the microstereolithography. It's a 2D because it is used extensively. So I just thought I'll add it, but irrelevant at least for this now. So this is a schematic of the thing that we have made, and these are the lines. These are lines of like I think 100 nanometer or 150 nanometer, something along that line. You can see the kind of precision that these lines have, the kind of non-uniformity. So typically, if you make any nanostructure, you start to see that kind of wobbly thing. You start to see the beam that is moving, and the structure is never smooth. Lines are never smooth, and that is what the beauty of the thing that we have developed. So this is not kept in a clean room. So you should appreciate the its room temperature without any vacuum, and no special conditions have been made for this thing. And we are proud to tell that we are among the best in the world right now who can make these structures. So 140 nanometer lines that you are seeing were made with the 800 nanometer laser. So lambda by 5, lambda by 6, that is where we are making structures on. And this is the actual system that is there. Not extremely simple, but this is a laser. It goes through these kind of optics. Finally, it goes to the microscope. This is a stage. So we keep our laser static and then move the stage. And whatever we feed in with the computer, it's all automated with the LabVIEW. And we can make it. So this is a national emblem that we made using our lithography. This is the actual structure that it looks like in this. So it's 200 micron by 200 micron. That is the kind of thing. We have explored all the aspects, like with the laser power, what would be the line width. I just explain it here. So below the threshold, material is not going to be there because photon intensity is not enough. But right above the threshold, you start polymerizing this voxel. So this will be the voxel area. That is where the sizes start to, this is where, so around 200 nanometer that you would be writing at this. And as soon as you keep on increasing the intensity of the light, your voxel size, the size that it is writing, will keep on increasing. So if you increase the power, you will start to get the bigger structure. And that is how you can play with the kind of sizes that you can play with. I'll skip this chemical part. This is again to show the kind of uniformity with which we can write. These are some of the 2D and 3D structure that we can write. This is again to show fishnet structure, one of the metamaterial structure that we had shown. This is to show the 200 nanometer line width of the book of our logo that is written. Some of you are maybe able to read even Gannon Permangayan, something like that. So again, this all process has been done in the room temperature. So even you can see it's while washing. So unpolymerized things are washed off. So it also the sasthan also gets washed off. These are like 2D gratings, 1D grating in the pure resin, and then corresponding deflection pattern to show the quality of the structure. We have done some theoretical calculation to match with it. This is the spacing between the two lines at 1.5 micron. This is also shown here. And 2.5 micron, 5 micron. So these all will show different colors because 1.5 micron, the spacing. So the distance between the two are going to be somewhere around 300 nanometer or so. So with that, basically you are in this photonic resin as well. So you will see the kind of colors that are there. And it will be metamaterial structure for the range, which is like 1 micron and so on. So we doped with the gold nanoparticles. So this is one of the gold lines. So the same grating with the backscatter where you can see very tiny gold all throughout the material. Some big particles are out there which are also visible. We got it with the EDAX also to make sure that we have gold inside the material. And since these gold nanoparticles are very close to each other, they behave like a conducting pattern. Then we made like various spacing thing to show various grating structure. We calculated the deflection efficiencies of various gold loaded structure, 1% to 5%. We have different Benauer power, so that is how we deal with it. Then we measured the kind of line width that it will be varying with different gold loading, and we have found that 5% works very well, and we can go much below the deflection limit with that. Then we again measured with the loading, the line widths, the line spacing, the scanning, the ranges in which one can write, and so on. This is one of the video where we are showing how we are writing this. So the bright spot is your laser spot, and wherever it goes, it changes the polymer to like it's the monomer basically earlier, and then when you shine the light, it becomes polymer, and that is what it becomes solid. So these are the few things that were written. This is a 3D structure video. So we start from the top. We write the top of the pyramid first, and as you can see, the focus is changing when we are going to the bottom of the pyramid. You can hear students talking also. So this is the kind of a pyramid structure that is there. This is to show variable grading because not all the time you want like a single space grading, and just to show again the power that you can write. So this is a photo taken from a standard mobile camera. The spacing was closer here and then it was more there. So you can see the entire spectrum of invisible light was covered in this variable spacing. This is a photo taken from the, this is from SEM, and this is a spatial standard microscope image. We used it for the solar concentration experiment. This is kind of a fishnet metamaterial structure that we have made. We put it on top of a solar cell and we saw there is an enhancement. So this part was extensively borrowed from our own simulation. So this design we proposed back in 2013 that plasmonic micro lens can be used for extraordinary transmission of broadband light, and we get achromatic focusing. So red will be focused before the blue, and this is the kind of profile that you'll be getting. So what we did was we took a standard silicon solar cell, we put our concentrator on top of it, and then we saw the enhancement in the solar cell efficiencies of the system. So we also hold patent for the word best ever two photon light with directly with this structure. So these are again few structures that we have written using our structure. So these are not the limited; these are the structures that we have published. Recently, we have been investing heavily on the 3D structure. We have made beautiful 3D structures, and maybe next time I'll show you those structures because right now it's under the review in many journals. So this is where I would like to point out. You see the kind of purity of the structure, colors that you see. That is only possible with the kind of precision with which we write. Typically, you would not see such a high purity. So the gradings you see will not be able to resolve so well, and that is where this expensiveness of the grading comes into the picture. That finer you write, the more precise your lines are without undulation, without any duration. That is what will make the colors pure. And also make those donuts, cauliflower, plasmonic donuts, and so on. Of these, then we made embedded 3D structure. These are silver nanodots, SEM fluorescence image. These are the dot, 200 nanometer dot that we have written in the entire things. This is a TM image showing these silver nanoparticles. Then there are a few other applications that we use. The black silicon is one. I'll just explain a little bit here. So silicon absorbs somewhere here. That is where our current solar cells. The expensive photo detectors or solar cells are somewhere here. They can go into the NIR. But if you make the silicon pattern, you can exploit not only this visible, but also in the NIR region. So in this high-end NIR camera, that is where people use these kind of patterning. Then these are fancy structures, and LASIK you might know, and then patterning for bio tissue engineering, micro needles. This is also we have made for drug delivery kind of applications. And again, some fancy structures like Ferrari and all those things have been made to show the strength of the this approach. The other approaches I'll very quickly go through because I think we are running really short on time. So template-based approaches for large area structure. So it's very simple approach. You have anodized alumina. So it has a hexagonal geometry because of its crystal structure, and then finally you backfill it with the gold and polymer composite. So when you heat it, it's closed capillary, so typically it won't work. But then when you heat it, the molecules start to crawl on the wall, and then finally the air goes up, and this molecule fills in, and that is how you make this plasmonic nanoarray, which is very important for various applications, optical filtering and mathematical kind of structure where the coupling is required. So this is a standard secondary electron emission. This is a backscattered emission which exploits the molecular weight, and whatever the shiny things you are seeing is all gold. And this, if these nanoparticles are very close to each other, the phenomena is going to be as good as the pure gold. So we compared this with the pure gold nano array that was made in this alumina template using electrolysis. Problem with this electrolysis is that you have to use conducting substrate, you have to put it in a gold bath, and finally the gold will grow on top of it. But we made a very simple method and just look at the optical response of the material that we have made, and with the reported one, it matches fairly well. Even we just removed the template and still we could get it. We simulated this also, and we found that if this chain of nanoparticles are very close to each other, the response is going to be similar, and that is what was there in our case also. We changed the aspect ratio also, that is what we did in our case. For this making nano array. Another thing for making these three-dimensional nano array is typically considered as a 2D or quasi 3D structures. Then for making 3D, we are using self-co-assembly for making photonic crystal kind of structure. Again, this is taken from a camera. This is a photonic crystal that we make, and this is a photonic band gap that arises due to the precise alignment of these atoms together. So these are shown where we incorporated these silver nanodiscs also or nanoparticles into this PMMA matrix of 3D. This is a standard one. This is an inverse open structure of these photonic crystals. We are using it for biosensing and cells kind of application. The third approach is electrospinning approach that we are using. It's a very simple approach. You have you put the voltage difference between the two, the needle and the plate, where we collect these nanofibers. We loaded it with silver nanotriangles, and this is a standard PVA fiber, and then finally, when we load it with the gold silver nanoparticles, we even could align it up to some extent. Then with that, the photonics activity, I think I have more or less covered. Little bit here and there are left. I'll just quickly go through the other activities that we are involved in. So we have used this laser ablation route for making various materials also, graphene, tannine, and even nanoparticles. We have made silicene. We have made lots of even siloxane is recently we have made. We used it for water decolorization. As you can see, when we add siloxane, after 10 minutes, it's very clear. So we used it for methylene blue, azure A, azure B, malachite green. So this is the mechanism we exploited. All the other, we characterize it using all the techniques, XPS, XRD, and so on, to make sure whatever we are saying is correct. When we are using graphene oxide, typically we use solution process method for making this graphene oxide and use it for water purification. This is not only graphene oxide, it is a carbon composite based material for water purification and desalination. Even we use it for E. coli removal. So this is before filtration, before the gas based material that is there. And these are the E. coli that you see under the microscope. And when you pass through our filter, almost all are known. We exploited that. Then we use it for this dye degradation. It was fairly well covered with the media, news as well as print media. Even CM when visited the Ariston during Tech Fest and the World Disaster Management Congress, he even tweeted from his own handle about the kind of technique that we are dealing with. This is a very recent activity that we have started. It's a graphene foam for water oil separation. As you can see, the oil, it selectively absorbs oil, and then you can remove all the oil from the water. So this is again to show the same thing, but this is with the polymer fiber we are exploring. So polymer, it's an electrospun membrane that we have made, and we modified it with the suitable material. And finally, we can separate. So this is the mixture of the oil. The oil remains there, water passes through. So this is what after separation we get. And then we are working on this heavy metal sensing also. It's again graphene based with a suitable modification. We are able to detect lead. We are also into the energy storage. So supercap is something which we are making. It's a graphene based composite material we are using, and we could get pretty good energy storage capacity. Graphene we are also exploring for air purification. So this is what I'll just quickly tell. So we have tested for ammonia as well as CO2. So this is a standard HEPA filter that we could use for all the air purification. It's very expensive, and still it would not be able to remove CO2 and all because of this molecular nature. So we have put one sensor here before and after, and this is after HEPA also S3. So S3 is blue, so blue is not able to remove, and this red is the input. So it's not able to remove any of the CO2, whereas after our material, so this is the profile for the S1, able to remove all the carbon and carbon dioxide. Similar case we found for the NH3 ammonia. We are also into this energy storage application. So we are into very good position here because most of the people are either into battery or supercap, and this is what the demand area where the power density we want as high as battery, and energy density we want as high as supercap, and that is what we have made possible to. This is a graphene-based structure that we have made, and we made, student even made this wearable electronics kind of thing on top of camera with the LED and so on. So we are big time into this prototype development. We want not only to develop technology in lab, but we also want it to see the light of the day, and if possible, go to the society directly. So we have developed quite a few things. So this is another showcase where we are big time into the simulations, acoustic, optical metamaterials, and plasmonic materials. Then little bit of nano generation, and so on. With that, I'll acknowledge my funding agencies for generously funding me. And this is this chessboard made by one of my students. He wanted to make that kind of black and white with a 2-photon lithography. So this entire thing is made within, I guess, 100 micron by 100 micron. All the, if you look closely, you can see horse, you can see king, queens, and everything here. And, this is a zooming image of one of the pawn to show the kind of things that we can write. This is again shown here. Thank you very much. I'll stop here. And I think last slide I wanted to show was of my team. So nothing would have been possible without my team. So we are a team of 2 professors, Professor Saxena and I. We have 2 visiting professors, Professor McNaughton and Professor Srivastava. And 25 students are working in our team. And most of the work is done by like this team, photonics team. Some of the members are present here, not all. I think most of the members that are present here are from the water team. Okay. With that, I'll stop. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this informative session. Thank you so much. And as ma'am said, that participants are requested for their questions in the chat section. Because time is a bar, only selected questions will be taken here in the discussion, and remaining will be solved via email. We request if there are... Thank you so much, ma'am. If there are questions, definitely they'll be solved via email. And now, I would humbly request our HOD sir, Professor Ranveer Kumar sir, for a short feedback of the session. Over to Professor Ranveer Kumar sir.
Thank you, Sharon. On the behalf of the department, I thank Professor Subhash Shukla for giving a very nice lecture on the nanostructured materials and the devices. She has given all the information about the nanomaterials. As the field is very important, the material science, it has the 2 aspects, as we all know. First, the thing is the materials, what we have the 2 aspects. First one is the synthesis process, and second one is the technological aspects. Madam has given the detailed knowledge about how you can synthesize the various materials, right from every material, right? Ceramic, polymers, composite materials, taking the nano gold particles and synthesizing it at the ground level, that is from the bottom up approach. It's a chemical route method. And it's all the fabrication of these nanomaterials by the lithography laser methods. And its application is very important. When we synthesize or tailor any material, we take all the composition of the material and we optimize its property. That is either the optical properties or the transport properties or magnetic properties, any materials, any properties. And finally, going to the application part of it, that is the engineering part. That is very nice. How we can synthesize or make the device of that particular material. So it is important we should optimize that material, property of that material, and that property can be effectively be used for the device application. It has given all the technological aspects, what the facility they have in IIT Bombay. And I think that in the department also, in our physics department, Verma sir is working in the field of luminescence, and other groups are also working in the same field. Generally, we are working on the solar cells, luminescent materials. So the application what we have, either the supercapacitors or the batteries or sensors, this application can be optimized for that. So I think in the future, we can have a linkage between the IIT Bombay and our Dr. Harisingh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya by this our department, and our students can go there and work with this group. And I think all the students, those who are in this webinar, have been benefited by this one. And most important thing is the basic sciences and this engineering that can be collaborated, and we can come up with some good devices if you work hard for them. As we know, in the nature, we have a beautiful, in the nature, the technology of this nature is optimized. For example, we can go in the deep water sea, we can see the creatures, they are emitting that bioluminescence. The technology, what they have, we don't have, but we are trying to do in our lab. And I think this was a very good webinar, and from this we can be benefited, or all the students can be benefited. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. And now we have reached to that point of the program when we will humbly request Dr. Sandhya Patel, ma'am, for the vote of thanks. Over to Dr. Sandhya Patel, ma'am.
Thank you, Sari. A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries on the virtual dial and everyone present in this webinar. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Dr. Sandhya Patel, on behalf of the Department of Physics, Dr. Gaur Vishwavidyalaya and the entire team of this event, to extend a heartfelt thanks to our eminent guest speaker, Professor Shobha Shukla, Department of Material Engineering and Material Science, IIT Bombay.
I think there is some technical issue. We are very sorry for that. Ma'am will be back in a few minutes. We are waiting for Dr. Sandhya Patel, ma'am, from Department of Physics, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur, Vishwavidyalaya Sagar.
Maybe I'll take this opportunity to respond to what Professor Ranveer had said. So IIT Bombay has this research internship program. So it's like 6-month long paid internship that can be exploited by this MSc MTech students. And definitely, I'm also looking forward to collaborate with the faculties that are working in the similar field. But I would highly encourage to use this opportunity of internship, as well as now SERB has also come up with this internship program. So I would be very much happy to host students from the Department of Physics at Hari Singh Gaur University.
Exactly, madam. Professor Ranveer is also working on the ionization physics actually.
Okay, excellent.
Myself, we are working on illuminates actually with various rare earth materials.
Okay. So up converters specifically.
So definitely we need your help in future.
Definitely. No, I'll be more than happy to help you. We are that way fortunate that we have very good facilities at IIT Bombay, and lots of characterization and fabrication facilities that are available in the lab itself. And rest central facilities can be used for SEM, GEM, and standard microscopic or spectroscopic characterization. But I think that you might also be having over there.
And we also hope that in future you must be visited to our department also, ma'am.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
Let
COVID
there is no
allow
us.
To express our gratitude and thanks towards you because you have spent your valuable time with us, and definitely the peoples of this middle region of this country, they will be benefited with this because a lot of research is awaiting in this field actually, and
Sure.
Researchers definitely they need a lot of supports regarding this, and I'm go through all the slides of you, and characterization is the problem here actually.
Okay.
And definitely if we get support from the institution IIT like IITs, definitely the scholar from this side they will do definitely better.
Sure.
They have a lot of potential actually.
I'm sure. No, I have seen, and that is why I typically go for these presentations because I feel like there is a lot of disconnect. We don't know. In the national conferences also, it's typically people deal with certain groups, and we don't get to know what others are working on. So this is a good opportunity to know what is going on and interact one-on-one, and that also pretty much opens all the opportunities. I will tell what I have done in detail, and that is how you will get to know. Otherwise, if you read my paper, you will get to know the one aspect, not the entire aspect of the research, because not only one thing that we work on. Typically, we work on a plethora of things. So, I'm looking forward to collaborate and have more interaction with your university, and I'll be happy to help as much as I can.
Thanks a lot.
Get benefited from your expertise also.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I request Sandhya ma'am is back with us. I again request her. Over to Dr. Sandhya ma'am.
A very good afternoon. To all the dignitaries to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Dr. Sandhya Patel, on behalf of the Department of Physics, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar, and the entire team of this event to extend a very heartfelt thanks to our eminent participation with us. Tiwari ji for his extreme presence among us and being the backbone for his wise words. Thank you, sir. My thanks also go to Professor Divakar Shukla ji, team for meaningful lecture. Thank you, sir. Professor for taking this time out to be with us in this webinar. I would also like to thank all the research scholars and participants from here and different parts of the country for making this webinar successful. I also wish to express my gratitude to our convener, Professor Ashish Verma ji, for conducting this webinar. Thank you all once again. Happy Foundation Day of Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar. Namaste.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And this national webinar was not just a webinar, but it was a great opportunity for all of us. Now, I, Sherry Nasser, would say bye-bye for the day, wishing that very soon we'll be back again with another webinar. Thank you so much, everybody. Good day ahead. The link for the feedback will be provided in the chat section and also in the WhatsApp group.